That's why cities are transdisciplinary phenomena. They intersect and cross every discipline practically. Yeah. Even doing nursing is different. Are you started yet?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even in my students, I have general education classes where I have some urban planners and some geographers, but I also have people who are in all kinds of different things. Nursing, and so I say to them, find out how your major intersects with the built environment. And nurses and other people, accountants, and say, well, I don't think it does, right? I mean, nursing is nursing, right? No, nursing is different in the city versus the countryside. What kind of accidents do you have to treat on a daily basis? Farm accidents, right? Alcohol overdoses, drug overdoses. In the city, you might have gunshots, knife wounds, and other things like that. You see what I'm saying? So different kinds of drugs. So that drug might be popular in the country. So the built environment and urban space interacts with different disciplines in different ways, and no one escapes it. Even you as a podcaster, you're interacting with me in a particular way because of the built environment. I had to park over here to walk over here.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's I guess the main thing you might want to walk away from is that for this discussion is that cities are transdisciplinary phenomena, highly complex. They defy understanding through reductive means. Mm-hmm. Reducing it to one thing or another, it defies that. And that's what's lovely
Could
about
you just pull the mic a little tad closer?
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Hello.
That looks great. That looks fantastic. Yep, that's real good. So you said to start off like kind of a frame for the conversation or for your teaching, your study. Cities are complex.
That's the point of departure you should have as a student sitting in the class when you're thinking about cities. You're going to understand them. The first thing off the bat is that they are going to defy simplistic interpretations, reductionist approaches, even methodologically. So you can have different ways of sort of grabbing empirical evidence. You can't do it all. You can't grab every variable that might matter. So there's always some bias involved in there, and part of that's because cities are complex.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of the thing that they say about like the modeling the universe. Like the only perfect model of the universe is the universe itself.
The universe itself, right? There's an interesting quote that I have my students meditate on, I guess you could say, from a guy, George Box, very famous statistician. All models are wrong, some are useful, right? So there's a lot of models out there, and everything from statistical models to conceptual frameworks for understanding cities, theoretical frameworks that are just plain wrong. But the reason why they're wrong is because they don't include everything, right? So they're all wrong. But some are useful, and so you can say what's the relationship between population and this other thing, and that might tell you a little bit, but you're never going to have the capital T truth about it.
Right. Okay. Right. Especially just with the brains that we're limited with, you can only keep so many variables in your head at the same time. So to properly conceptualize even small portions through one frame.
Yeah, although it's interesting, we were just talking about this last week in classes, how the importance of generational characteristics come into play. You are, how old are you?
35.
35, and so you're a?
Millennial.
I'm Gen X. My students are mostly Gen Zs, right? And my daughter's Gen Alpha. And each one of these groups is different, and they interact with cities in different ways. I think that the newer generations that come in, because of the sort of technological and ambient, all the artifacts in their lives, this house is a very different place than one you would have seen 40 years ago.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Much less 80 years ago with no electricity.
Right, exactly. So, and now that affects your psychology. I have a feeling, I'm saying all this to just tell you that I have a strong feeling, and I think there's some work on this as well, younger people think in more complex ways.
Interesting.
They have to, because the world's a more complex place, and you're sort of born into it. You can do Baudrillard or what's the one famous poet who's a drunk, and he has a poem, "Born into It," right? Born into this. You did not become modern. You're born so, right? You're born into the environment in which you sort of exist, and that has developmental consequences for your brain. I have a feeling that younger people are just sort of necessarily becoming more adept at navigating complex things.
Makes sense.
No one my age or above wants to hear it.
Sure.
Because they're all a bunch of avocado. Oh, that's you. I'm sorry. You're the avocado.
I'm the avocado generation. That's
so
right.
These other guys are doing something else. They like to have a single bullet theory for why there's a difference here. Of course, they were all trained to think in reductive ways. You know. So. And
to some degree, it's necessary because you can't, if you're trying to really comprehend everything in your daily life, your actions, the thing you're seeing, I mean, you'll go crazy. It'd drive you to a point of insanity, anxiety, and just non-usefulness,
Right. And being able to filter out the good from the bad, the useful from the misleading, it's all other skills that, frankly, people like me in higher ed aren't really, and K-12 aren't prepared to teach those new generations because they can't see it themselves. Right, they can't necessarily see that. They have to have sort of an interest in it, in order to make it in the classroom. So we're still teaching younger people who are in a more complex environment to think in reductive ways, which is a disjuncture, and that larger superstructure sort of theme might be at the root of a lot of problems that we'll have in the next 10, 15 years, right?
Because in order to grapple with increasing complexity, you kind of have to have some training or experience thinking in those kind of ways.
Yeah, in critical thinking in order to sort of filter information or assess sources, to propositional logic, modus ponens, modus tollens, like if then, these kinds of things, and people aren't being exposed to that kind of thing, then they're just going to take it for granted that whatever they hear is the truth, because how else would it have made it out to this?
Sure.
But I have a feeling that younger people are even more savvy to that. Like they understand that, I have a 12-year-old and she seems to be pretty clear on, I mean, it's anecdotal, but pretty clear on what's going on in the world.
Yeah, it is a difference I've seen. So I was a debate coach for a while, and when I heard people talk about Gen Z, I never had the experience that other people have. Maybe if you're, I don't know, I hear maybe some elementary teachers or you're a barista at a coffee shop and they talk about the Gen Z stare and just the inability to make eye contact, in a proper way, hold proper conversations, that I just haven't, and it could be a selection bias because as a, debate coach, it kind of filters out a lot of people. And then now the people that I tend to run into that are that age tend to be kind of ambitious, extroverted, outgoing.
Yeah. Oh, there's tons of your generation was sort of, I think, the shift towards more entrepreneurial activities, and some of that was related to the overarching structure of the economy. So you have the jobbers and consultants and things like that, right? Uber and all the rest of these kinds of, even doing freelance work for, whatever. You can do it from home. They're the most entrepreneurial. It's like you hear a lot of people talking about how lazy, for example, some generation might be. Okay, the generations they're talking about at GVSU, for example, what's the largest school by students and seats is business. Okay, everyone's railing about these blue-haired hippies and their gender studies programs. That's a tiny fraction of the overall. Tiny fraction. I mean, and it's interesting to recognize that people focus on these tiny absurdities, maybe, or sort of like uncommonalities.
Exceptions to the rule.
Exceptions to the rule. Take trans, for example. Trans people, a tiny fraction of the population. Why are we talking about this tiny fraction of the population who has really no bearing on the conduct of daily life for the vast majority of people?
Yeah, I mean, being trans seems like it could be a really complex, complicated, tricky personal issue.
Sure.
If you happen to be trans,
right.
the same way, anyway, if you're like quite short or quite tall, or if you're just some kind of outlier from the general population, it's kind of a personal thing you have to deal with. But the societal obsession with it seems ungrounded.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this comment on YouTube today. Someone said, shame on humanity for something that they, no, it's not shame on humanity. I have nothing to do with that. There's 8 billion people on the planet that have nothing to do with this. And you're overgeneralizing. You take a small example and you generalize it, but that's part of what we've been training people to do for the longest period of time, and it's really got to come to an end. And in my classes, it does.
I guess my question is, you're a professor.
Yeah.
How long have you been professing?
At GVSU, 8 years.
8 years.
2 years before that, other places, and yeah.
So when someone says Gen Z stare, is that something you can be like, oh yeah, I know?
I've never even heard of it, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
And that's interesting because when you said it before, I remembered that this other conversation about geographic diffusion. right? The rate at which things diffuse into the general public now is much faster, but it's also not general. I mean, when back in the 50s, when there was like 4 channels, and you knew what everyone was watching, there weren't, as they are now, literally a limitless amount of things that you can do and intersect with the media.
Yeah.
And so I had never heard of the Gen Z stare.
Yeah.
Never heard of it. It might be big in some circles.
In my algorithm, the comments that I'm reading.
Eli Pariser had a really cool talk a long time ago about information bubbles. So you put yourself we all have our own sort of bubble. And the way that search engines tailor to us enforces that bubble. I mean, we're getting it wrong on so many different levels, but look, you want to get back to talking about cities?
Let's talk about cities.
Okay,
Yeah.
All that matters, but yeah, we got to focus though.
Sure, yeah. So let's just run through these questions one by one. And again, if any of them you're like, no, this is not a good question, but the first one you would run by me anyway. So we've got in Grand Rapids 2 major cities running through the city.
Yeah. So 196 and 131.
That's right. Right. Yeah. And there's, obviously super convenient. But people are terrified of like the S curve. There's constantly accidents there. It's just weird having to engineer a highway throughout an actual city.
Right.
People hate it to the degree that people in different cities, and this has happened in more than one city, but like talk about like removing the highway. Like let's get those highways out of town, make the city more.
There's been a bunch of examples of that actually around the country, successfully. Even downtown highways as well. And so if you go to the Congress of New Urbanism website, they have a page about this, and you'll have 12 or 15 different case studies from the United States, and maybe a couple in Europe as well, where a part of the city was daylighted, right? If you call it, like if you have a stream and you cover it with concrete, and then you take the concrete out, they call it daylighting the stream. Well, you can daylight the land underneath the highway as well. So there's lots of examples of this. So why we have one, right? Why we have 131 is a complex question, but I think if you had to sort of boil it down to some root cause, it was a 1950s obsession with automobiles and mobility and progress. How do you measure progress? And for most traffic engineers and capitalists, frankly, it was the moving of goods and services and being able to freely move those things around to get the maximum amount of market extraction. You extract the most out of a market, right? That's probably why we have it. Is 1950s mentality is why we have it, because they had certain things that they valued and other things they didn't. They didn't value the lives of black people. Do they still do? Right. So
we made progress, but you can see the scars or the effects of 50s thinking on modern society, because you can't just change a highway.
Right. I mean, you can't just put one in and expect people to. People get moved. And I think so. That's one part of it. Is there's an obsession with highways and cars and mobility, and under the guise of national defense and the economy, right? So that's the paradigm that existed at that time. There weren't a lot of things to push back against that, like the lives and dignity of African American communities that get disrupted when you put a highway through there. You disconnect the two halves, and now they kind of wither, right? Mm-hmm. If I cut this plant, so mother-in-law's tongue might not be a good example, but you cut a plant in half, both sides are going to die, right? Because they need both sides, and so it's no surprise that African American neighborhoods throughout the country were chosen for these highways. South Grand Rapids was no different, but that's. I think if you had to answer in a short question, a short answer, why do you have a giant highway running through? It's because the people at that time thought it was a good idea. Mm-hmm. It wasn't. It wasn't a good idea then because they didn't have as many variables as they could have put into the mix, right? So one variable, the biggest one, is cities are organisms, right? If I put a tourniquet here and cut this arm off, it's going to wither. Okay? City is no different. You take a neighborhood and sequester the neighborhood from the normal economic interactions in the city, everything from housing to jobs to commercial, recreational. That's the people will pay for recreation. They can't access all that, so the city doesn't get that money from them, or that interaction, or that economic activity, and they don't get to interact, so they wither as well. So it brings everybody down. You disconnect neighborhoods from the rest of the city. That's not was not on their radar then. It is still not on most people's radar nowadays, and even most urban planners said, I guess, are sort of just now coming around to that idea. And so the question is, why would we get rid of this highway? The answer there would be to reconnect the city and to make it more effective economically, make the inhabitants more mobile, get them different access to different things, and so they can get the optimal job for their skills, and the employer is happy. And now you see what I'm saying? It's got what we call cascading effects. And we want those positive cascading effects in our city. And so getting rid of the highway might be one way to do that.
If you were hired by the mayor to be the urban planning professional, and look, I mean, the hypothetical world, he's not going to ask you any questions. We're just going to do whatever you say. Your budget is $2 billion or whatever we need. Would you do it? Would you at least entertain removing the highways from Grand Rapids?
Absolutely.
There?
I mean, you don't have to get rid of
rerouting them.
196 is it also cuts the neighborhoods in half, but the neighborhoods that it cuts off north of it are actually fairly
more middle class, upper class.
Yeah. So they have other resources. They're not tied so much to a bus to get around, right? I mean, so they're not tied so much to walking to work or walking for their community, to the extent they even can do that. They might not even be able to do that. So, but wealth insulates you from certain things, but. And so I don't know that the city would benefit so much from getting rid of 196. I mean, might be, but maybe not. 131 is a different story altogether because it goes right through downtown. And so, I mean, think about this. 131 is above the most valuable land in a 200-mile radius, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How much could you? Right now, we're paying. There's some dead weight loss. We're paying for that highway to be there, and it sure serves some kind of economic functions in some way or another. But we have a housing crisis. We have unemployment is always a problem. We want our people to be socially mobile. We want them to go from the poor to the middle class, and from the middle class to wealthy. So we want that to happen, right? Ostensibly. Well, you've got 250 acres underneath this thing, and at one house on 1/10 of an acre. I mean, that's thousands of homes. Right? Yeah. And that's just one single family detached home on a 1/10 of an acre plot. What if we had vertically houses as well? If all those buildings, or let's say half those buildings were 5 stories, and you just quadruple or quintuple the number of homes on those acres, all the commercial activity, all the parks and recreation, all the beautiful boulevards, whatever that could go into that space, the developers make money, the public has more housing options, so the prices go down because there's more supply. All the supply and demand, the more supply, house prices go down for everybody in the city, right? Because there's less demand for a particular house, and that drives the price down a little bit, which is good for the public. Might not be bad. Might not be great for the landowners. But we can get into Georgia's taxes here in a minute as well.
Go.
Land value tax.
I'm gonna triple check.
Let's make sure this is a recording.
Yeah. I've been
press play there. Yeah.
I always check things like 7 times, and then in the middle of the podcast like twice, just because I've had disasters a couple times, and so it's just stuck in my brain.
Due diligence and attention to detail are important.
Yeah. This is not. You can't redo conversations like this.
Right.
So I guess what other question on this list do you think would be the most? Number 5. We got to get to that, but number 2, 3, 4, 2, and 4.
Some cities have borderline lawless zones, like fenced-off areas of Berlin. Would that be good for Grand Rapids?
Do you understand the premise of the question? First of all,
I mean, no, not really. That sequestering, again, going back to the main principle, like the geographic principle of cities, they are organisms that have parts that need to be connected. Okay, so if you're disconnecting parts, automatically you're sort of like de facto kind of harming the city. I have a different take on this kind of stuff. Like we were just yesterday lecturing on ghettos in urbanization.
Yeah.
What they are, what kind of purpose they serve. You might be better off having these lawless zones as gated communities. You've got some neighborhood that's not doing so great. Why they should maybe we could play with the idea anyway. Of having the people take direct control over their own built environments, taking direct control over their neighborhoods. All the homeowners and renters get together and sort of try to govern themselves. Now They have neighborhood associations and all that kind of stuff, but that might be one way to sort of control the populations. They don't get together, so this looks like there's a mechanism that looks like there's some kind of way of making progress. But I think the system is not necessarily giving you the tools to upend it, right?
Yeah.
And if you really had a lawless zone in Grand Rapids, whatever that means, I suppose one solution to that could be to empower the residents who live in that zone to have some kind of say over how they're policed and sort of what kind of job opportunities, what kinds of ways could they share different amenities. There might not be a bad place to have a car share program to get people to feel like they're in a neighborhood and a community where they can share resources and they can rely on one another and trust one another, and that might be one way to sort of drive down crime. We've got to get creative with this kind of stuff because, we've got lots of ideas from the past 50, 60, 100 years. I don't see any of them working in any kind of way, maybe even contributing to the problem. So I think we really got to start thinking about outside the box. But I had one principle that cities are places of human interaction, so they need to be connected. There's another principle that I also like to sort of think about when I'm talking about cities, and that's democracy, right? And democracy is a pretty powerful tool, and having people democratically control their space through negotiations and discussions, identifying values and seeing where the values can, all that stuff would be great for your lawless zones that you have out there. I mean, that might be one way to go about combating the sense of being outside in the first place. I mean, a lot of people who live in ghettos feel outside, and the ghettos are constructed in particular ways to make you feel outside or ensconced away from the rest of it. Going back to highways, the highways were laid out in particular ways that willingly or not, or knowingly or not, isolated people. But it wasn't just a physical isolation, the psychological and economic isolation as well. So you have to take those kinds of things into consideration if you want to have a well-rounded answer to the problem,
So you just mentioned that some of these things we have to try. We've got a bunch of ideas, maybe worth giving some of them a shot in a careful way. I think a lot about...
Well, if you think about, states were called experiments, right? So you have 50 different experiments. Well, cities are no different. I mean, so you've got 30,000 towns, cities, and villages in the United States. Free them to create their own, and you'll probably get a lot of innovation and novelty.
But they're constrained by state laws to some degree?
Yeah. All cities are creatures of the state. Michigan and other state incorporates Grand Rapids to exist. Cities aren't mentioned in the Constitution anywhere. So, it's just federal, state, and county. Those are the only things that are mentioned in the Constitution. And that brings in the whole thing, well, why would the rural areas, which largely control a lot of states, right? Like Kentucky, for example, it's got a couple big cities, Lexington, Frankfort, and Louisville, but most of the population is rural, and so they control the state house, right? There may be some kind of rural opposition to that or state level opposition to that, allowing cities to do that, because my God, what if they figure it out and the city becomes a great place to live, and our rural areas get even more depopulated, their economy would go back to the level it was before we electrified everything, before electricity, before electrifying the countryside, the rural areas were kind of a shitty place to live, and the reason why they're not shitty places to live is because cities subsidize them with electricity and sewage and the rest of it. If you didn't have that, there'd probably be like 10 people living in UP.
I was a debate coach for a long time, and that's all policy. I mean, across the board, but it's all policy things. And something that, I don't know if it's maybe a frustration, that a lot of the experiments we have in states, towns, et cetera, are accidental, natural experiments, if you will. And I wonder if in urban planning, is there any more systematic way to do it? Like, we have 7 neighborhoods, we're going to apply a different condition to each of them. Would that even be a good idea?
Well, you got this ethos in the United States about treating everyone equally. And cities do have a right to zone within their, this is a right that all municipalities have to sort of zone and organize the space within their jurisdiction. But you might come into some sort of 14th Amendment issues, treating these people differently than those. That's the clause that says we're all equal. It's post-Civil War. And the state can't treat you differently than me, just for some arbitrary reason, So that might have something to do with why that might not be feasible legally, but that's not my area, but I'm just guessing. My own personal opinion is let people explore taking control over their lives. This is not something that the city, state, federal, and certain economic interests have. This is not good news to them, right? Because you might want to get democratic here, you might want to get democratic in other places, like taxation, for example.
So all things being equal, you think maximizing democracy, giving agency to neighborhoods and populations is a good way to explore a lot of ideas?
Well, if you value creativity and the advance of civilization, then you want to have experiments where people play with stuff and see what progresses. That's been the role of cities in human civilization from day one. All right, they are places where you bring lots of different people from different places together, and they work it out. They sort it out. It's sometimes through totalitarianism, sometimes through strongman, sometimes through democracy. You know what I mean? So those experiences and examples are what propels society. This is why we have all this right now. It's because of cities. We live in cities now because we have cities.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I have the microphone and I have my coffee because cities do this service for human civilization. Well, if you want that civilization to evolve, then you have to free them up to do that. And so that might be one way to do it.
Sure.
So if I was in charge of Grand Rapids, I would immediately sort of for one thing I would do is institute a citywide e-referenda. So we know all the addresses to all the houses here, and every house can get a vote on right? So you have an email address that's associated, it could be like gr.gov, Chad Frederick at gr.gov, whatever it is. And once a month or once every 2 weeks or whatever it is, you can just go online and check what is your opinion about all this stuff and get 200 some odd thousand responses. And then we don't have to fucking guess anymore. We don't have to guess at what the public wants, and we don't have to listen to what the news media says the public is interested in. We can just get it right from them,
And anything that's probably would be a really unpopular proposition because, damn, a lot of people would lose a lot of power if you gave it to the people.
Yeah. But that's the job. I'm a social scientist, and that's the job of the social scientist. You listen to a guy like Bertrand Russell. Power is the same. Power is to the social sciences what gravity is to the hard sciences. So power and all of its agenda setting or brute force, but also the normalization of certain things. All that is a way of controlling people, and there's tons of ways of controlling people. I say let's not control them as much. Let them be a little more novel, innovative, creative, and we'll see what comes out of it. It's not going to hurt anybody. People. If I want to grow corn in my backyard or whatever, why? If it's not hurting anybody else, it's not driving down other people's property values, and why should you care?
Good. Thank you for dropping the keyword Grand Rapids in a few times. That's great. That'll be great for views.
Let's got a couple of other things here. First, tell me what is this lawless zone you've got here?
Okay, so first, I've never been to Europe, much less Berlin, but it's a good friend of mine. We were spitballing much more insane ideas, and I think the concept is just there's a lot of creatives. Berlin has a huge rave party drug scene, and so it's just de facto areas. The police don't even try anymore. It's and those communities are somewhat self-policed. You can't just go in. Right. They gotta know you. His idea that it would be is that it's good for culture to have these places where people really can just do whatever they want. Yeah, maybe there are some kinds of downsides in some way, pure crime statistics or something, but it's just you get innovation and ideas and culture from that.
And that's one of the big things that drives human civilization is culture, right? A variant, a wide variety of different cultural norms, values, and habits, and those are all experiments to see what happens, right? My question is, are the people in these areas happy? And are they harming people outside of those areas? And so we could start the conversation there and see what's the utility of these places.
That makes a lot of sense. Like if it makes the lives of everyone else around the community way worse, like maybe not.
Right. Like a highway going through the middle of the city. Because everyone that lives within a mile of that thing has increased rates, statistically significant increased differences in asthma, right?
Yep.
And other cardiovascular issues.
Mental health things too. There's just this background buzz constantly.
The noise,
you have to look at it.
That's one thing that's light and noise are not natural to the human evolution, right? I mean, we don't have a lot of that in our experience. We haven't evolved with that, and so there's a disjuncture between the way our minds work and the sort of environments that we create for us to inhabit. And so, should we change the people to make them more resonant with noise, or should we dial it down a little bit?
Right. You'll notice I have a fan on. That is for white noise because I live in a city.
Yeah.
Shout out road. It doesn't get in the way of the audio at all, but that's the reason.
And that has an economic cost because you're paying for that electricity.
Sure.
I mean, you got to see how all these different things sort of like building. I know it's statistically significant, sort of that houses might have a fan going on. Maybe it's not that much money, but a dime here and a dime there, eventually end up with $1. So
yeah. Let's talk about, and I know it's not like you do research on Grand Rapids specifically, but it is going through a period of development. Again, we just hit nearly $1 billion of construction last year, driven largely by the new soccer stadium, the new amphitheater, and then we have coming up a huge development, like probably underway, like late planning stages for some more like Grand Rapids level skyscrapers, like 30+ story buildings right across the street. What are the
with this parking lot here?
Right. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
So the question 6, right? The new soccer stadium and outdoor arena. These are definitely good for the city, or are they just rich people's vanity projects? Well, I mean, it depends how you're measuring success, right? If you're measuring success in terms of construction dollars invested in the city, obviously, right? I mean, that's money's being invested in the city, and so you can say, well, we developed. The question I have with my limited economic training is, what's the opportunity cost of these versus other things we could have done with that money and space, right?
Because all of these projects do entail huge tax breaks, incentives. Like it is. Money coming out of the city's pocket from our pocket.
Right, so we're subsidizing the wealthy people's investments.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, going back to two principles we discussed already, the connectivity of cities and democracy, were the people invited to sort of weigh in on this before anything else, right? Urban planning writ large has a huge problem with communication with the public. Okay, and they'll put out a survey here and there, and they'll, they're not done very well. I mean, if you really want a good survey, they got to be done randomly. You got to pick people who aren't seeking out to have their opinions heard. That's one. You have too much bias in there. And then they'll have like charrettes and workshops where they'll invite 200 people in and talk to them, and they'll say, well, we had a survey, we did, we got 700 responses. Yeah, you got 200,000 people or more in Grand Rapids. Okay. You don't have you've got no idea what they want. None. Absolutely none. And we're not gathering that information, and all we're doing is guessing. It's all a bunch of bullshit. They're not. Here's the problem. Institutions like urban planning and others, they just don't take democracy seriously. They really don't. I mean, they enjoy the benefits of it, but they don't reinforce it. They don't go back to it. It's not a cyclical sort of thing. It's an iterative process. So they're getting all the benefits of the output of a democratic society, and then they're privatizing the sort of benefits of that, not cycling it back into the city.
It's like almost, in some examples, parasitic in some way.
Yeah, right. I mean, I would say, one way you could put it. Look, I mean, the whole purpose of having a city is so that people can enjoy it, right? It's not necessarily there were cities, if you want to go back in history to the very first cities, they were not bureaucratic places. They were not economic places. Trade wasn't the number one thing. The number one thing was spiritual and religious civic unity. right? Look at places like Chateau Hayek and other Jericho and other these old cities, you know, Mesoamerica, China. What was the main feature of all these places? A temple, a pyramid, right? An altar. In cases of Chateau Hayek, it's a smaller place. So but in the middle, in the center, is where the witch was and did all the sort of, you know, spell casting and stuff. No, cities are for human interaction. They were for human interaction back then. They weren't for agriculture, right? I mean, everyone says, you know, everyone, right? You tell me, have you heard this, that agriculture created cities? Right? I mean, you got to have.
If someone told me that was a fact, I don't think I'd question them. It seems plausible to me. Yeah,
that's the way we even today we train students K-12 in this theory, agriculture first. It wasn't agriculture first. You know, we had villages with granaries that we filled by hunting and gathering. And thousands of years after that process, we started to move beyond horticulture, where you're sort of like moving the weeds away from already existing plants to planting the seeds themselves. So cities were around for thousands of years. Towns and villages were around for thousands of years before the bureaucratic state. See, so that tells you a little bit about what cities are for and what measures of success you might want to have. Measure for success for me is not how much GDP this stadium costs. It's how does it enable people to interact, right? Does it improve their quality of life? Does it give them something to do? You know, is it a good third place where people can access and recreate and share a communal experience? You know, that's what that would be for. So I think this cut off, so I can't refer back to the question. But
it's just a memory card thing. There's like certain.
No biggie.
Yeah. But it's a cool thing about cutting everything for short is you can interrupt things. I'm gonna have to lock in.
Well, then can I go to the bathroom?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
There we go. If that idea resonates with you, the fact that early cities were primarily spiritual entities, not economic or military even, right?
Yeah.
People say, well, we have cities that protect us from nomads. Well, why didn't they have walls for 10,000 years? You know what I mean? So why did...
Yeah.
Very easily could have built palisades and stuff if that were the main function. But as it turns out, nomadic incursions might be dramatic, but they're very rare. You know, I mean, maybe every couple hundred years.
And depends on, your time period and where you live. Like there's some cities in certain times of history that were just constantly being attacked, but historically globally rare.
Yeah. I mean, So... But the question then is the new soccer stadium and new outdoor, are these good for the city? I mean, they might end up being good for the city, but I can't imagine that anybody, if you had done a survey of all 200,000 people, how many would have said, oh, in this place, soccer stadium, no doubt. Well, 1%? Maybe. Maybe. So I kind of have a problem with finding benefits in things that people don't need. You know, I mean, what better would have been just to ask the people what they need.
There's a lot of hate for it, specifically in
in the neighborhoods adjacent to it.
Comments on social media comments.
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, you know, you could even have a community, like a town hall, you know, at 2:00 on a Tuesday. It's just like, who can show up to something on 2:00 on a Tuesday?
It's a big thing that we talk about, you know, and this is why the traditional means of communicating with the public from urban planning are just way not. I mean, maybe in the times when these processes were imagined back in the 50s and 60s, they were asking people who were much more homogenous back then. You go into a white suburb and someone says something, well, probably could generalize it to most. But now in the city, there's way too much diversity, way too many interests, and the world's just a much more complicated place. So you can't make those kinds of guesses. Of course, putting a soccer stadium in there is going to get a lot of derision, right? Because no one asked for it, you know, and you know, whether or not some kind of economic benefit comes out of the city or cultural benefit comes to the city out of this. Again, you got to ask, well, what else could have done the same thing more democratically and more efficiently, more effectively?
So that's a great question that I don't have on here, but what, you know, in cities generally, or Grand Rapids specifically, what's the low-hanging fruit in urban development where for, you know, minimum time and money you get the most benefit?
Ooh. That's a good question. Kind of.
Maybe not soccer stadiums.
Yeah, no. Stadiums in general, probably not. Roundabouts. No, I was kidding. No, I honestly don't know like what kind of interventions to the built environment would be most effective, or other policy areas.
Maybe built environment, although I guess urban planning, it's like built environment plus a bunch of other things.
And that's one problem with urban planning right now, is they're sort of spread too thin. I mean, it should be, urban planning should be about building the spaces people inhabit without too much concern, I think, with what people do. Okay? You don't want to do social engineering, right? Although we've been doing social engineering for the past 50 years. I mean, the automobile and suburban project is shaping the way people view the world. That is indoctrination, at the highest level. Now, maybe they didn't think that was what it was in the past, but it absolutely was that. I mean, someone must have seen that back then, but no one listened to him. What would be? I think it would have to come down to getting the understanding of the public and including them into the processes, and so they feel ownership over the process. They feel ownership over the city. If you feel ownership over something, you're going to protect it, right? If you don't, if you're just transient in and out, you don't give a shit, and so no one cares. But the city could enable people or permit them to develop, not force them to do it, but permit them, give them the space to have ownership over the city. They could do that, right? This is a matter of public policy, some kind of plan you have. You could hire 1,000 GVSU students to canvass whatever you want to do. It wouldn't be very expensive, maybe $1 million. Probably get, but that's just not on our radar. Democracy is not on our radar. Connected cities, this is not on our radar. So there's the communication is one sort of like cheap answer to that. But as far as like built environment interventions, you got to increase walkability. I think if I was the czar of I would have to think about this a little bit more to sort of tease out the details. But I would something along the lines of prohibiting new single-family detached homes being built in the city as a general rule. I mean, if there was a single-family detached home and it got destroyed, then you can build one there. Yeah, maybe give a tax incentive to make it a duplex, right?
To be fair, it seems like all of the new residential construction anywhere in walking distance from here is all buildings. It's all apartments.
Yeah, good, because we want to attract people to live here, and we want to give them lots of different opportunities. To make a choice for where they want to live best, right? No, in my own research, published research, the one that's coming out here pretty soon too, we've got, when we're categorizing housing stock, we've got 3 general varieties. We've got single-family detached homes, we've got large multifamily buildings like this one, and then we have what we call missing middle housing. That's duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and brownstones up to the 19 units maybe. We don't have any of those, right? We're not building those necessarily. We're building a lot of large multifamily buildings, which have sustainability problems of their own, so with like noise, with emissions, with air quality. I mean, there's all kinds of problems with large multifamily buildings that sort of drive. Now, do they increase density? Sure. Is there more to life than density? Yeah. LA is one of the most dense cities on Earth, and it's completely automobile dependent, right? So density does not necessarily mean walkability.
LA, almost everyone hates it.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up there. I mean, it's a great place to visit,
But even then, like, if you got to drive around that city, like, but the highways are all death traps in that city.
That's the thing, that there's so many people there that that's how they recreate.
Well, I would hope
it's a challenge. There's a lot of guys out here, especially, and maybe I suppose angry women as well, who like to confront and challenge strangers. This is an ethos, I think, in the United States that's kind of new, but maybe not. I don't know. You have to do some actual research on to find out. But to me, when I'm driving around LA, it seems people are enjoying the tension.
Huh.
I mean, they'll drive. They'll look at you to see if you're going to play the game. Are you going to fuck with me? And I swear to God, it is really like that. And it's not like an insignificant number of people doing that. I mean, it's like
if it's 1 out of 20, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. I was going to say, like, but if it's like 5%, that's going to impact everyone, all the other 19 people. So there's a weird psychology going on. If we really want to understand LA, we've got to get into that sort of like mindset, and that's not in my field at all. So
sure.
I just a casual observation. It seemed like he's having a good time fucking cutting people off. Yeah. So
I guess my point, just like, if you go to New York as a tourist, you don't need a car.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
if you go to Chicago as a
Nobody
tourist,
goes-
you don't need a car.
Yeah,
If
nobody
you
goes
go
to Paris to drive.
No.
They
But
go to walk.
if you go to LA as a tourist, like you better have a car.
You have to.
That's not. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna sit on the beach all day.
Exactly. Let's talk about loneliness. So people talk
social
about
isolation.
social isolation.
Which number is that? Oh,
yeah,
9.
Yeah.
Right. Now it's almost like you read a class of mine, because we talked about this for about a week as well. Walkable environments where you are able to interact with people on a face-to-face individual level, you do develop friends. You make things called friends because I could see you going to the coffee shop the same time every day for a year and never talk to you. And then we're at the library and I see you like, hey, I remember you from the library. This happens a lot in the world, right? I mean, just because you see someone every day doesn't mean you necessarily talk to them. You become familiar with them, though. And you get to trust them because their behavior is more or less the same, right? And if every time you see them they're erratic, then you can stay away. But for the most part, 99.99% of humans out there doing stuff are just doing regular human shit. Okay, and so you get familiar with them, you get comfortable. And then if you have a shared experience like a power outage where everyone says, oh my God, there's no power, and someone's got a generator and everyone's putting their phones together, now we feel like a community of the shared experience. The car separates people from the public environment. It gives them kind of a virtual space within the public space. You isolate it, tinted windows, going 45 miles an hour. Whereas, and you don't have, you could drive by your mother, you wouldn't notice it.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're walking, you're more in the present moment, right? And you're more embedded necessarily in the social fabric. And so therefore you have more opportunities to do. Do you have to? No. Are you going to? I mean, maybe there's given enough time, make another appointment.
It's also the case where, take a coffee shop example, that you might run into someone, have a good conversation with them, but it's kind of weird. Okay, we had a good 2-minute conversation. I'm gonna invite you over to dinner. Probably not.
Right.
But I see you the next day. Hey, we want to talk about a little
2
bit
years
more.
later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Right. No, and this loneliness question, I would say is directly related to the idea of connecting cities, making them more walkable, making them more useful to their inhabitants locally. Right? So I've got a donut shop near my house. I got a gas station with, I've got a Subway. I've got some other places to go, cool restaurants. So that satisfies a little bit of my need to get out of my house and do stuff. But I have, let's say, 10 things to do. Well, if you have 100 things to do, right? And you have 100 things to do here. I don't have that. I've got to drive. I get down here somehow from my suburb.
Yeah. The issue living down here isn't finding things to do. It's like there's way too many things to do. You just choose any day. What do you want to do? You go do it.
Yeah, but to the extent that people live in the same space and occupy those same places, you have an opportunity to make connections. Maybe not just friends, even if it's just, remember that stupid show Cheers from a long time ago?
Sure.
None of these people were friends necessarily, but they were associates. That might satisfy this ability to go to places and sort of interact with the same people and have a community might be the key to that. If you separate everything, explode cities so that everything is really far apart, well, for one, most of your time is, or not most of your time, but a significant portion of your time is committed just to getting places. So that's all that time in your car is being removed from the time that you could potentially be doing other things, right? Meeting people and developing relationships and all that kind of stuff. But spatially, if they're all isolated, then you're not going to have the kind of concentration and regularity of interactions to produce, acquaintances and friends and things like that. So, people in GR complain about not being able to make friends. Can urban design meaningfully affect loneliness and social connection? I would say it's the number one thing. It's the number one. Economic stability, Maslow's hierarchy, right? I mean, if you don't have anything to eat, you're not going to go out making friends, right? But if there's a certain general level of economic stability for the vast majority of people in here in the city, which would be benefited by having it connected again, right? So it comes back to that principle. So it's a principle and not an idea, walkability, third spaces, some density, and what's the word that Bookchin uses? Propinquity. There's the word propinquity. propinquity is about density and connectivity, but it's also, about family, right? And so my first cousin has more propinquity to me than my third cousin.
Okay.
Right. So there's some kind of like an association involved in that word, and cities produce propinquity. Right. So knowing that, well, then I should be making your policies to increase that, because again, that's what cities do. Right? They do other things, GDP, and dump places to dump your money. Sure, but that's not what they do. Right. That's something that it's a tangential outcome. If urban planners in Grand Rapids were serious about loneliness, then all they got to do is sort of increase the ability for people to interact and right, and develop that sort of community sense. They know where they're at, they know who's in where they're at, and they can share an identity with other people. Right.
So, last question related to that.
Oh, yeah, what time is it? Because I got to. I've got a few minutes left because I got 11:08.
Oh, we got to do rapid fire then.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's get the viral clips in.
Okay. Is that where I start cursing and all that jazz? Is that where I start cursing and freaking out?
Oh, whatever you want to do.
We cover most of these things.
Curse if you want.
Oh yeah.
So all of these questions.
We should do housing costs.
What's that?
We should have done housing costs. I mean, it all comes back to that as well, right? I mean, if you want to reduce housing costs, then you need to increase not only this amount of homes, but the kind. We do not, even in Grand Rapids, have a dearth of single-family detached homes, right? I mean, we've got plenty of those. And
tell me how much time do you have again? I'm sorry.
A couple minutes.
Okay.
Minutes tirth. Awesome.
Okay. We're probably not going to get to that.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
so you've got exactly a minute for each. Feel free to think before we start the timer.
The best designed city in America? Whew.
Or whichever one of these you think you got a good answer for.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough. Most underrated city in America is obviously Grand Rapids. That's no doubt. Grand Rapids is an amazing city. It's in an amazing area. The environment is clean. The people are productive and convivial. So I've been all over the United States a zillion times, and all over the world a bunch too. Grand Rapids is fucking amazing. All right, people who live here are lucky. We're lucky. Okay, you better protect this place. What's the most overrated city in America? It's tough. Let me punt on that one. I might come back to it.
Yeah, punt on it.
Which country has the best urban planning? I mean, there's good examples all over the place. I mean, the measure of that would be, does the city allow people to innovate, and do they allow them to evolve? Barcelona's great at this, right? And you got Amsterdam's great at this. Amsterdam had highways in their cities in the 70s, and it was a shitstorm. They got rid of it, and now it's Amsterdam. You know what I mean? It's a world-class destination for world tourists. And it's a great place to live if you're a resident as well, right? All the Scandinavian countries, Benelux countries, those are all really good at urban planning. Spain's good as well.
Cool. We got to ask this one: are skaties and graffiti artists good for cities?
Skaters and graffiti artists? Well, the question is culture useful to cities? And I would say yeah. I mean, if there are people who enjoy skating, then you should give them some kind of outlet. If you tell them that their interests are bad, they're going to do that anyway, but in a way that you can't monetize, and that you have to come up with all kinds of costs to fix the damage from it, right? So, I mean, again, inclusion is probably the rule of thumb that we want to go with here on these. Graffiti, that's a different thing, right? I mean, they're both kind of nuisances to some people. But if you had an outlet, if there was a giant wall in downtown Grand Rapids where people could register to display their work, there would be less incentive for them to do it elsewhere, because they get the recognition that they want, not just from other graffiti artists, which they really want, but from the state and from the public. And you're part of the community. We might like everything that you do, but you.
So just give people an outlet to do what they want to do.
I would say so. I would say so. Fewer rules would probably not be a bad idea. I don't know.
Sure. The bulldoze question, that's about a city, but maybe I should ask in general, like, is it sometimes worth bulldozing neighborhoods and starting over?
I mean, look, you can bulldoze a neighborhood and do it in a way that doesn't. I mean, you can reimburse people. We have, eminent domain, and you're supposed to give people money for this stuff. But I don't think that really captures the full cost of displacement, right? I mean, if I get displaced, you can give me money for my house, but I still have to find a new school. I still have to find a new doctor. I still have to find a new dentist. Like, where are my groceries? Where am I getting everything starts over again. Literally everything. We're friends. Now I can't rely on the people who are in my community that were given daycare, or my mom lived there. You know what I mean? So now we're all displaced and disconnected, right? Of course, there's going to be a cost involved with that, which is never remunerated. We just feel like value is in the property. That's it. No, that's a very reductive way of viewing the phenomenon. So gentrification can be good. Bulldozing neighborhoods can be good. It depends on how you do it, and unfortunately, we just don't do it well.
Great. I think that's all of the ones I really, really want. Should cities ban cars from downtown?
Oh. No, I don't think they should ban cars, but they should right size them for the purpose. I mean, you can't get rid of cars unless you give them an alternative, right? So the answer to that question is no, but give them other means of traversing urban space without a single occupant vehicle, because single occupant vehicles require parking, gas stations, dealerships, repair shops. All this built environment, which could go to other things like museums, theaters, coffee shops, homes, right? And so we're paying for cars when we could be getting the money and benefit from land use taxes and other things, right? And I mean, if God forbid, if Grand Rapids did something like that, and the revenue might be astonishing. You might find out that the income tax goes up because there's more work. Property taxes go up because there's more homes, and it goes on from there. 10,000 new units, that's 20,000 more people in the Grand Rapids with their economic, contribution to the economy, local economy. I mean, it's no. Should we ban cars from cities? No, we should right size them. We shouldn't have it be the answer to every problem. Right, but you got to give people an alternative: walkability, bikeability, infrastructure, transit, and the rest of it. Ubers and other things, right? I mean, there's all kinds of new technologies that are coming out, which answer that question somewhat. Should cars be banned, or should single occupant cars be banned, or should private vehicles be allotted space in the city from our communal space that we all share? Should they be allotted that, and what's the price for that? Now, if you make like Shoup from UCLA is good on this. Free parking costs money. It doesn't cost you any. You can park there for free, great. But if you go to a grocery store and you park your car there, they're paying for your spot, so you're paying through the groceries. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as free parking in a weird way.
Should Grand Rapids raise meter prices to $6 an hour?
I mean, some places at some times might not be a bad idea, right? 6 seems a little bit high, I guess, given the sort of ambient wealth we have here. I mean, the median household income and stuff might be a little bit high, but we can do that. We can model that and make, we can figure that out. And I think there are people in Grand Rapids and the government that are doing that. Some studies of how you price communal space. The private use, you're renting it. From the public. What's the right price? Well, I mean, I think it should vary. For number one, you should get out of your mind that it's going to be this amount of money per dollar writ large. I mean, at this parking space here, you might not have a lot of turnover because the business that's right here needs people to come in and out. And so if they're driving to this place and they can park in and get the job done real quick, that's the benefit to everybody, right? That might be, you might want to charge that person who's doing that economic exchange $1. I don't know where it is. Sure. And in some places, on-street parking out in the leafy sort of suburbs areas, it might not, in my neighborhood, it's in Northwest and West Side Connection, it would be ridiculous to sort of charge.
Free is a good price for a neighborhood like that.
Right, right. So we've got to find, we've got to quit thinking reductively. We've got to start thinking in more complex ways and contextually and the rest of it. And once we start doing that, I think we can have a lot easier time at this thing called society.
Sure, makes sense. Final, just open it if you have anything. Any hot takes about urban planning? Things where the comment section will get nice and angry at you.
Look, there's a reason why we build shitty cities, and we're still building shitty cities, and all the roundabouts in the world isn't going to change that. We got to come at it from a different set of priorities. Urban planning needs to get his head out of his ass and stop navel gazing itself and looking at all the good things it's done. The cities that we live in are extremely inefficient. Urban planning had a lot to say about that back in the 50s. I'm not saying that they need to atone for it every year, but what they need to do in order to say, they say we're sorry. Well, if you're sorry, change, right? Don't keep telling me you're sorry. Change your institutional processes. Deride workshops and charrettes as being sort of undemocratic and ungeneralizable sort of exercises that they are. They're not. They're not useful. They're misleading, if anything. You feel like progress is happening. No, it's not. Progress is not happening here. Zoning, right, is another big one. I mean, you could stop being obedient to the rules and shape the rules to be obedient to human needs, right? If the rules aren't working, change the fucking rules. But we don't do that. We say, well, it's kind of expensive to change it. Not changing it is expensive, okay? And you haven't done an analysis as to what's more expensive. So before and I guarantee you, the organization of the entire city space is the misorganization of the entire city space is way more expensive than a couple of people in the zoning office going through some of the political process and writing out new zoning rules. Period. Sorry, you haven't even done that yet. I mean, I can tell you, but so no. I'm really thinking hard about going to Detroit. They have the American Planning Association conference there. Black shirt, me and all my students. White text. Urban planning still sucks. You guys. Look. I love cities. I don't love planning. Because planning is just the institution. Cities are way more important than that, and we can do them better, and we know how to do them better. But we're just not letting ourselves do it better. We're letting a small segment of the society dictate how we live, and that's probably an undemocratic process, and we need to get rid of it. And we had to have planners start thinking, how can I find out what the public wants versus how can I sell this idea here to the public? Okay, let me put that one on tape.
Cool. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no
this is absolutely wonderful.
Sweet. Sorry, I talk a little fast. I'm a little bit of a...
No, that's good. No. That is ideal.